So hello everyone, welcome today to the workshop, or to the webinar, Broken Promises, Power Trust, and the Abuse Crisis in the Catholic Church. We'd like to introduce today both of our speakers, Dr. Demasure and Dr. Professor Valère. So to begin, Professor Demasure holds a doctorate in practical theology at the KU Leuven. She was the president of the Interdiocesan Service for Pastoral Care in Belgium from 2003 to 2007. In 2008, she became a professor at the Faculty of Theology at St. Paul University in Ottawa, Canada. She held the Sisters of Our Lady of the Cross in Christian Family Studies from 2008 to 2014, and was appointed as the Dean of the Faculties of the Human Sciences and Philosophy from 2010 to 2014. From 2012 until 2014, she was the president of the Société Internationale de Théologie Pratique. She was a professor at the Gregorian University in Rome and the executive director of the Center for Child Protection at the same university. In 2019, she founded the Center for Safeguarding Minors and Vulnerable Persons at St. Paul University, Ottawa, Canada. Now, a professor emeritus, she works with a research team on the international project towards a trustworthy church. Her area of research is sexual and spiritual abuse and abuse of trust, trauma, and pastoral care for victims/survivors. Professor Demasure has been accompanying survivors of abuse for more than 25 years. Welcome, Professor. I would like to also introduce Professor Valère, who is an associate professor of canon law at St. Paul University in Ottawa. He holds a doctorate in canon law and a bachelor's degree in civil law. He is also a graduate of the Canadian Institute for Conflict Resolution. He is the Director of Studies and Vice Dean of the Faculty of Canon Law. His field of research focuses on the protection of minors and vulnerable adults in canon law. He has a particular interest in the interaction between canon penal law and the various secular criminal laws. He is the author of several articles on the penal law of the Church. He currently works with a research team on the international project towards a trustworthy church. Hello, Professor.
Hello, Pastor. Thank you.
Hand over the floor.
So, welcome to all of you. Is my screen clear? Can you see it? Yeah? Okay. So, let's start then. So, we have been talking about sexual abuse for quite a long time now. As you all know, it has started the crisis in '84 in the United States. We are now 24, so that's quite a long time. But when we look at how sexual abuse has been approached, of course, there has been said that it has to do with sexuality, but mostly the analysis has been to look at it from the point of view of an abuse of power. And the abuse of trust has got little or almost no attention, and there is no research on it. But if you look at it in a very simple way, how could you abuse someone and abuse your power if the other does not trust you, and come close to you? So it's very strange that there is no research on that topic. And like I see that amongst you, there are therapists, and they told me that the thing that is most difficult to repair is the abuse of trust, and so that people can trust again persons. So since this is so important, we have to discuss it, and it needs more research. So normally there is a trust between a trustee, that is the one who is trusted, and a truster. But we in the church, we have a special issue there is a third factor, the most important, in fact. There is the gospel, there is the life and death and resurrection of Jesus. So we will see how this is important a bit later. So a second point is, oh yeah, I will say that I talk about the gospel because there is some research about trust, but it's all in the area of management and business. So we differ from them. And there is a second thing, there is this reciprocal influence, because the trust is built between two people, for instance, you and a priest, or you and a bishop, or you and a lay person who has a function in the church. But there is also the institution. So if we talk about trust, we have to look at those two levels, the level of your interrelations, and then also the institutional level. I try to go to the next one. Yeah, it works. So when do we trust someone? Well, we trust someone if we deem this person trustworthy. Like Mullering said, trustworthiness is in their model, the model of Meyer, the responsible basis for trust. We will trust someone if we deem him trustworthy, even if some other factors play a role. But today we are not going to go so deep as also talking about other factors, but I do want to talk about trustworthiness. Because what is trustworthiness? When will we deem someone trustworthy? I talk about that because I will talk later about the research we do. And what we know is that it's very difficult for people to define what is trust. You can put yourself in front of a paper and try to define it and write down what is trust, and you will see it's very difficult. And we remark that also in our research, people have to think quite a lot to come up with some notions that are linked to trust. But it has to do with trustworthiness. It has to do to more, but the first thing, to trust a priest, for instance, we have to deem him trustworthy. And trustworthiness, that's a global concept, we could say, and it has three elements that are included in trustworthiness. It's ability, benevolence, and integrity. So what is ability? First, we will say it in general, a bit more theoretical, but I will illustrate it with results from our research. But first of all, let's look at ability. It is about knowledge skills. Does this priest have the knowledge skills? Does he have the competence to perform effectively in a specific domain and the institution? Yes. Expertness, and on an interpersonal level, having a good judgment. That's ability. It also has to do with benevolence. Benevolence, the lowest level is we have to give our trust to someone, we have to be sure that this person is not going to harm us. Otherwise, we are not going to trust him. And so that means that, in fact, if you trust him because you think he's not going to cause you harm, you put yourself in a vulnerable position. We all know that, but till now, this vulnerability has only been analyzed from the perspective of power. But in fact, it has to do we have to look at it from the perspective of trust. If you trust someone, like your partner, for instance, your husband, then you are vulnerable because you're not going to control him, because you know he's not going to do your harm, and you take a risk in trusting him. Then integrity, that's the trusted perception that the trustee adheres to a set of values that the trusted finds acceptable. However, within the church, those values cannot be like in a business. You can agree upon which values are important here to us. But in the church, we have values. So it's not that we are going to choose values to find them somewhere. No, our values stem from biblical values and the values based on our church tradition. Okay, let's tell now something before we go deeper into the topic. What is our project about? It's a project of towards a trustworthy church, because we know that the trust has really been betrayed that people had in the church as an institution, in priests, in bishops, in lay people also who have a function in the church. It's really, trust has been really shaken, because we have citations like someone said, you know, till now, I have never met a priest or a bishop that I can trust. So this is, of course, we see how deep trust has been shaken, has been betrayed. And we need to, it's towards a trustworthy church. We have to do something about that, because we want the church to heal. We want victims to heal. We want secondary victims to heal. And so we want to have a look at how to repair the trust, because without trust, there can be no healing and no recovery. So thinking about that, we have been thinking of, if you want to know how to restore trust, the first thing you have to know is what elements like ability, benevolence, or integrity have been damaged the most. What do people say about that? And we wanted also to find out what former believers think about how and if restoring trust is possible, and what elements need to be changed. So we have a research team, and we have the University St. Paul researchers. So it's myself and it's Professor Nkouaya Mbandji who's there. We have two research assistants, Raphael Gauthier and Camille Gonzalez-Blanc. And then we also have external researchers, Dr. José Melukunel, Professor José Ngalula, and we had in the beginning Dr. Chantal Labrèche. So what is the aims, in fact? Well, we have, our questions are around three axes. The first axis, we ask the people, what is trust for you? And who do you trust? Not necessarily in the church. Who do you trust? But after that, we ask, of course, who do you trust in the church? So our first aim was to understand and breaking down the concept of trust in the Catholic Church. And for that, we wanted to know the causes for the breach of trust and the key conditions that can gain confidence, And then ultimately, and that's the topic for next year, we want to develop tools and action-oriented learning material which helps to share best practices and identify strategies for rebuilding trust. And we are thinking about special forms of conversations. We can learn from restorative justice, and we can learn from the method that has been used at the Synod. To know more about restorative justice and how we would work with those tools, you will have to come to the conference in November. So it's a qualitative research that we did. We did it in person via Zoom and written. Not many written. We prefer to have a conversation. The languages are English, French, Spanish, and Italian. And our research was approved by the Ethical Board of St. Paul University. Till now, we have 43 interviews: India, Africa, Canada, Europe, East Europe, and Latin America. 6 from India, 11 from Africa, 7 from Canada, 5 from Europe. It will become 7. East Europe, 9, and Latin America, we will have 7 as well, but they are on their way. We have 20 men, 23 women, so it's pretty equal. So primary victims, we have 18, those who have suffered abuse themselves. And we have non-primary victims, so secondary victims, 25. And there was our lay people, there are priests who were victims, there are bishops, and there are women religious who have done the interviews with us. So, like I said, the first axis, I forgot the second and the third. The first axis is what is trust for you and who can you trust? The second was, has those betrayal of trust affected your faith? And if so, how? And the third axis is, because we wanted to be, after all, a positive research project, we wanted to know, well, how do you think trust can be repaired? What should the church do to repair trust? So we didn't want to have it, we wanted it bottom up. We wanted people who have experience with sexual abuse and other forms of abuse to answer those questions. Primary victims, 8 women, 2 men, and minors. So we didn't interview minors. We interviewed adults. That was the agreement with St. Paul. But 6 have been abused as minors and 3 women religious. Secondary victims, you know, those are the ones who have witnessed abuse. And 8 women, 2 men, 2 minors, women religious and religious leaders. Types of victims, women, men, minors, and women religious. 9 women, 2 men, 10 minors for women religious. So now what is interesting, we have also have a look at about what kind of abuse are they talking. And you see here, sexual abuse, it's the greatest number, 25. Spiritual, it's also very high, 16. But what has been a surprise for me is you see 9 people have been talking about financial abuse. I didn't expect this to happen, but yeah, it is in several countries, especially in Latin America and in Africa. People complain about huge financial abuses that have happened and that have destroyed their faith in those priests and by extension in the church. So the broken promises have affected trustworthiness. So let's now see more what it means to us in the church, and let us see, I have the citations from the people so that it's not going to stay just theory. So ability, it's, I repeat, knowledge, interpersonal skill, communication skill, and wisdom to do a job. Another word used by Meyer would be expertise. So competence in a certain domain. And what could it mean then? Ability regarding abuse in the Catholic Church? Well, trust is built when the church demonstrates its ability to create and enforce policy and procedures to protect vulnerable members, provide support to survivors, and ensure accountability within its ranks. Formation of priests has to provide them with, and then go back to point 1, knowledge, interpersonal skills, and so further. Okay, what do all the people that we have interviewed in all continents, and my citation, I looked for it, I have citations from all continents, so that you don't think, oh, it's only Africa, oh, it's only Latin America, oh, it's only Canada. No, it's from everywhere. So first, that has been tremendous for me, that the law is not applied equally. Why? Because fundamentally it's defending the priest and not a person. For me, all canon law must be reformulated, putting the person at the center, Latin America. There are some priests who live with the assurance that even if I commit a misdeed, they'll just move me to another place because I'm a protege of such and such bishop, or a very close friend of such and such bishop, protege. Even if I behave badly, this priest say, it'll be covered up because I know myself with such and such bishop, Africa. That they are powerful, mighty, and do whatever they want, and they're going to be always protected, North America. I went to the X. They helped me. Yeah, we wanted to be anonymous. They helped me with X to deliver these papers. And X delivered these people to the Pope. And 5 years went by. I know that some made to disappear those documents, Latin America. Another great disappointment remains the issue of Rupnik. So I mean, everything that has happened has been tremendous, and yet this man continues. That causes me great pain. I mean, I can't explain it, but it's something inside, a great inner pain. The hierarchy go to any extent to cover up the case and to protect the man in the church, India, because I think they're more in the role of defending the institution, of defending the authority of power, Europe. So you see that if people see the abuse of trust on the level of ability, that's what they are telling us. So let's have a look now at the level of benevolence, you know, not committing harm. By trusting someone, we make ourselves vulnerable. At the same time, the other becomes responsible. To trust someone is to hope that the other will not harm you. It is a transfer of power, which adds to the power dynamics already present. So benevolence, it's generosity, loyalty, openness, availability, caring. And regarding abuse, we could say trust is built when the church is compassionate and supports survivors in their family and their families. So let's have a look again at what the people say. Every time I hear about it in the media, it is as I myself had been the perpetrator, says someone. So she identifies herself with the perpetrator. In the name of the church, I feel like I'm a murderer myself. That means someone who kills the human being, the child or the adult victim. It's like I kill the human being and I kill God. It's really very serious, and it affects me a lot, Africa. They don't stand for justice for women and children. No support is given to the victims and persecutes them till they withdraw the cases. There is no justice in the church for victims, India. She has been the priest to the priest. She had seen the priest for spiritual guidance, but at one point, the priest wanted to go beyond that. So what she shared with the priest took advantage of to abuse her weakness, to try and to take advantage of the sister in question. Africa. Let's have a look at the last point, the integrity. I have to say, but we will develop that much more in our conference. But if I look at the whole of the 43 interviews that we now have, and there's still a few more to come, we have to say that what affects the people the most, what affects the people the most in their faith, the most in their loss of trust, is the lack of integrity of priests, bishops, lay, religious. I forget all the time to say religious. I'm sorry, I add them also from my former explanation, and also deacons and lay in positions of authority. So integrity, what does it mean? It's consistency, discreteness, fairness, promise fulfillment, our topic, reliability, value, and congruence. And for us, they have to act in consistency with the gospel. Church tradition could be added as well. So I could I don't know how many pages I could fill with citation about how people are so upset about the integrity that's not respected. So they do not respect what the word teaches us, Africa. They do not keep up their promises. They tell blatant lies to protect their interests. No integrity is shown in their dealings, India. There are priests who live to marry in the traditional way, and there are priests who give birth to children. Well, I guess the women, the bishops forced the doctor who was there to abort a sister. He threatened both the sister and the doctor, saying that if you disobey a bishop, you go to hell. They are committed to lifelong celibacy, but don't know how to abstain. They appear as on one side an inner life or a secret life on the other side. This kind of dualistic separation in the inner personality of the person, for me, it is not a sign of integrity, and I would not have much trust in those kind of situations. Canada. And then about the financial abuses, the money we give to serve the work of the church, but when you give that money and it goes the other way, it goes to the priest, what's the point? What we do here is that it can be, in the eyes of Europeans, of Americans, go about small money, like it's not like hundreds of millions or so. It's what they offer, what they give in the church during Mass. And they give it to the church, and then it seems it goes to the priest personally to buy another car, or he wants to give a birthday party or whatever. There are also, but in another continent, more in Latin America, about greater forms of, it's a form of corruption. It's not respecting integrity. Let's go to my last slide before I go to my colleague. So it's broken promises. So among the early trust theorists was Valère, who defined interpersonal trust as an expectancy held by an individual or group that the word, promise, verbal or written statements of another individual or group can be relied upon. To trust someone, you have to be able to rely on what he says, on what he promises, or what he writes. The fundamental promise for clergy and religions consists that they follow in the footsteps of Jesus, that they would be faithful to the gospel. And further, there are also the promises of celibacy, chastity, poverty, and or obedience. By saying, I promise, says Hume, who is a renowned philosopher, by saying, I promise, ego takes the risk of never being trusted again if she or he fails the test of fidelity. So we are not going to stop with those difficult citations sometimes, but we are going to listen to my colleague who will try to, or not try, who is going to talk about the restoration of trust.
Thank you, Professor Demasure. Just a second, I would just like to share my PowerPoint with you. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. So what should the church do to repair trust? This is the question that we want to answer now. We don't want to answer, we want to listen actually, to listen to what the people who have been interviewed have said. Before we go there, okay, what do we understand by the word repair trust? Trust repair, what is it? I would like to really insist on the fact that it's a process. It's a process in which a person or a structure, because also we have to repair at the interpersonal level or at the institutional level. So it's a process in which a person or a structure attempt to increase trust following an untrustworthy act behavior that has broken previous trust. And we know exactly what had happened in the church. And we have heard also on people who have been interviewed what have really, I would say, discourage them, because before they trusted in the church, they trusted in the person as a priest, they trusted in the religious sister, they trusted maybe of the in the lay person who was in charge of one activity in the church. So it's all about repairing the harms that have been done and also to see how to move forward. I say it that people have been really hurt by those acts of abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, manipulation. And because of that, they don't believe, or the trust has been broken. And for most of them, for the 43% that we have interviewed, yeah, those acts have seriously wounded their faith also in the church. It's a situation where we can't just stay silent, because we know today what happened. And as a church, what can we do to repair it? I would like now to share with you what people we have interviewed have said. I would like to do it by using the 6 mechanisms or approaches suggested by Nicole and Sabina. They will help me maybe to put into each approach or level what people have said. It's a useful tool, I said, but it's not said that we cannot find other ones, but this one I find it quite useful. So let us go with the first approach, the sense-making approach. The sense-making approach, just 1 second, is about understanding the causes of the abuse that have led to the loss of trust. Because as we said, as Professor Demasure was saying also, in other words, finding the cause of these scandals, and one person was saying that in Africa, and healing them is far more praiseworthy than curing the consequences. So let us now listen to what they said. In Canada, for example, a big problem is those people that we are going to listen now are all talking about, they find the cause of the abuse or the loss of trust in the clericalism. A big problem goes back to what I was saying earlier. Some priests, bishops, cardinals seems to believe that they are above everyone, that no rules apply to them. And maybe it is not okay to say this, but even using the title Monsignor, which seems to come from the Middle Age. Okay, I will stop there. So again, Pope Francis has been talking quite a lot about clericalism in the church. And this other person will say again, if I was going to say what would be the one thing I should change, is clericalism. And clericalism is not just the priest. It is the lady giving the priest power. So if I could change that, I would get rid of clericalism. That's what we have to change. We have been talking a lot about clericalism. What is this? Just the way of thinking that we are above the Christian faithful. And other people will also say it is like we are above the law. And that goes against the vision of the church, that the vision of the church issued by the Second Vatican Council, but also just the vision of the church, like all together we pilgrims, we are all called to work together. Let us now look at the relational approach. This approach will try to look at, I will say, okay, the role of emotions and social ritual during the repair process. Social ritual and symbolic act are perceived as needed to resolve negative emotions caused by the violation and to establish the social order and norm in relationship. So the strategies like apologies, penance, redistribution of power, establishment, the expectation in the damaged relation will be used here. In the relational approach, one thing to maybe to focus on is the redistribution of power functions. This person from Canada will say, I would like to have relationship, equal and equal, human relationship, and realizing that everybody has a speciality or a gift. He is equal as a person, but his job is a priest. It may be important to stress here that maybe those who are called to serve the God, those who are cleric, religious, they remain human people. They are persons, right? So, and if they have been called to serve, is to serve those people of God, people who look like them. And it seems obvious to say it, but when we look at the institutional level, all the clericalism we just talked about can make people forget, make the cleric or those on position of power forget that they are just there, they are there normally to serve, and they are also human. And what is requested from them is to put their gift in the service of the people of God also. One person in Africa will say, so we need to change the way we talk about what we call priestly power or the power of order, the sacrament of holy orders. We need to redefine the question of power in the church. We need to redefine the relationship of authority, because the faithful who are fallen victim to priests and bishops were in a relationship of trust. We say that they are spiritual, that they are our spiritual fathers in the faith, etc. That they represent God. So they are in a relationship of authority. So for me, we need to redefine the content of power, of the relationship of authority, of priestly power, of episcopal power, and even of parental power. Today, we have been talking a lot about synodal church. I think it's all about recognizing also the place, the fundamental place of all the Christian faithful in the church, and how we can participate to it. Collaboration, again, in the relationship approach. Fostering new collaborative form of ministry that we need. Clergy don't know how to work collaboratively with laity, and laity don't know how to work collaboratively with clergy. So we need to develop approaches to collaborate, to collaborative ministry that would help both work together. We will learn as we go. But if we form a steering committee at the diocesan level with priests, religious, and lay people, guiding and developing a work plan for making these things happen, developing communication tool, doing support, giving support to survivor, then that will be a kind of collaborative process. So when we listen, for example, for a Christian speaking like that, those questions cannot remain silent, need to be answered. The other person in Canada would say, the rebuilding of trust will take place if we understand a new way in which power and authority, in a different way, not top down, spiritual and sacred authority, but in that communal way in which Jesus said, if you are 2 or 3 united in my name, I am in the midst of you. So it is going to be a new perspective on how we build trust. And that is why I feel so hopeful. Because we can't just remain on the broken, we have to move, we have to repair. And to find a way of repairing is just maybe stop this kind of thinking that, okay, we are just top and other people are down. Or they just have to listen what we said. Or there's maybe the Spirit speak only on us, in us, sorry. You know, another person in Africa will say, to learn to trust others again after being betrayed. We must not let the attitude of that person who betrayed us, in parentheses, affect our relationship with others. Now, let us go to the third approach, which is the regulation and formal control. Here we'll be looking at law, I would say code of conduct, sanction, and sensitive to repair. First, people interviewed will say that we should denounce the abuse, and we should strive for justice and common standard for all the faithful. A group of people in Africa will say, abusers must be denounced. Instituting a system of service of free and fearless denunciation to denounce abuses of power, such as sexual abuse. Again, the Church of Jesus Christ remained holy, and despite the scandal of abuse, I don't shy away from them. But being able to denounce, forgive, and render justice is an opening to move forward. Stop covering things up. Stop moving things around. And the faithful must see that perpetrators has been punished. That will show that the church, the Catholic Church, is trustworthy because it tells the truth. Jesus said that the truth would set us free. Let us tell this truth to set the church free. And we know already the process is not easy even to denounce. We have spoken about it in some previous webinar. But despite the fact that it's difficult, it seems to be the way to go if we want to stop what we know have happened and still happening. Another person interviewed in Canada, we said, but the other thing I think has to happen in terms of the sexual abuse crisis, especially, and it could be extended to other things, is the Pope need to impose common standards on bishops all over the world for how they deal with it. And he needs to hold them accountable. And we know also that in the church, this Pope have been issuing many documents, Vos Estis Mundi, to render some leader of the church accountable. And we should continue on that sense. Let us continue with the regulation and formal control again. Here we will mention the financial crimes and sanctions. And we said this is spread not only in, even if here I have taken some citation from Africa, but we can find it in all the other continents. I would like to change the relationship to money around the administration of sacraments. It's a small simony, you see. How can we even sell what the church called the gift of God, the church receive freely? That's a form of abuse, because the people of God are entitled to receive this gift freely. that they should concentrate, talking about the clergy in general, they should concentrate more on their priestly work and not get involved in financial matters. Because sometimes it can go by we can have the conception that because I'm ordained, I know everything. The priest is expects everything, but that's just not true. And a person in Africa will say, sanctions, give sanctions, prescribe severe sanction, apply this severe sanction. A person, a priest who behave badly should be punished and not be removed from a parish to another parish. He must be sanctioned. And we have also learned this with time. The solution is not to move a perpetrator from one parish to another, because he will probably do the same thing to another parish. And mercy cannot work without justice. And the Pope Benedict have really insisted on that, and the meaning, the sense, the value of punishment, of justice also. And sometimes we thought before in the church or somewhere that to punish is not charitable. No, to punish or to sanction is actually an act of charity. Let us look now at the informal cultural controls. So here the tactics involve the implementing cultural reform, like beliefs, value, like set up the training, the mentoring, and how people can manage, how can be done in the church as an institution to be on the way of rebuilding trust. For some of the people interviewed, it's really important to pay attention to the change of value, attitude, and belief. A person in Canada will say, my deepest hope is that there is a change of attitude to me. That is absolutely fundamental. I wish there were more priests who were honest. Professor Demasure mentioned this already, who were honest. We show that they are just normal people who are close to other people, who organize more meetings with families. Listen to them. Again, listen to them. Not to be in a position where we know it all and we have to tell you what to do. No, listen to them. But what I mean, people in power, you know, when you have bishops' conference, they should have women that sit on there, because women think things differently. They have another way of looking at things. They know how to protect children better than men. Another person in Africa at this time will say, to regain trust, the church must, through its servant, continue to show humility, mercy, justice, and be peacemaker. In Canada, a person will say, power differential, getting to know people as people, not what their title are. And I see that more and more the culture of power differential that causes toxicity. Again, informal cultural control. The insistence here is to look on the formation, the training of layperson and priests. A person interviewed in Africa will say, another thing we need to do is organize training, seminars to help the faithful understand this. For us, Catholic faithful within our church, what is our function? what does the priest function begin and end? Another thing I would like to change is the way priests are trained. Priest training today seems to be outdated. We deprive priests in training. Young people in training to be priests or think that in today's world are already outdated. Because communication is at the forefront of today's world, so there are many aspects of this, particularly in training priests, that will have to change. And obviously, if we want to change the culture, change the mentality, change this culture of clericalism, we really have to emphasize also, according to the people who have been interviewed on the training. We will say even from families, not only from the seminar, I will say personally from families. Even the way that even maybe have more input of outsider in seminary to train seminarian priests. The another approach is transparency and accountability. When we have lost, when trust is local, is broken, mostly concerning and at the institutional level, the response have also to be a kind of institutional response to be able to restore trust. There are priests, I'm reading this person interview in Canada, they are priest, bishop, cardinal. The priest, priest, bishop and cardinal need to be held accountable. I think one of the key is credibility. Credibility can only come about when there is accountability. I think those who think those two things have to go together. Credibility and accountability. When somebody is in the position of leadership within the church, when somebody says something or affirms something, is this believable or not? I think credibility depends on accountability. It will be a gain for people if they can see and actually verify that what is being said is being done. And so accountability is at the heart. Because if just what we said is totally different on what we do, it's difficult for people to trust, as we said in the first part. As long as we are not accountable, people have a right to be suspicious of everything we say and of everything we do in the church as a church leaders. The final approach will be trust transference. The point here would just be that to understand that at a certain point, because mostly at the institutional level, for people to trust that the institution can really guarantee the fair process and guarantee the respect of the rule of the law, sometimes you have to take someone from outside, a third party, to lead the process. A person in Canada will say, I think we need some bishops who are willing to acknowledge that they don't know how to do this and to bring in the help to get it done. And if a few will do that and start and work with people who have been working in organizational change and who know methodologies. So it's really important that to get someone sometimes from outside. We see today like the church sometimes for some investigation will bring someone from outside just to guarantee that, okay, a fair process is being respected. So you might, a person from Canada, you might have somebody that is able to step in and say, enough, those questions are not appropriate, for example. Stop. And you might have another one taking note. Another one that's going to support them through the whole process. And we know it when we're dealing with victim, you have to take all those precautions for the victim to be safe and to feel safe. What can we conclude? What can I conclude here? After listening to people interview, I can personally, I think trust repair is not an easy task. I say at the beginning it's a process, but it's a long process which can be tedious, which require patience and respect for at every step during the process. The different approaches that, or what we have heard here, is meant to serve, to help us, to help the people of God, or those who have been abused, either primary or secondary, to be able to regain trust, and mostly to establish a kind of what I call here a safe and synodal church where everybody has a place and a say, where people can freely say what they think, and where people can freely call out when something is going wrong. I think that is the way of being church. When I was talking yesterday with someone about what I was going to present today, he said to me, what are you going to talk tomorrow? I said, I think I'm going to talk about, to just share with people what can we do to repair trust. Then the person said to me, you think, is it possible? When I was still thinking before I answered, the person said, he answered again, he said, it can be tough, but maybe it's a door to open because we can't just stay in the dark. Thank you. I will stop sharing now. If you have any comment, any question, please feel free to bring them up, Professor Demasure, and I will be so happy to answer them. Thank you.